Hi everyone, my name is Toni Marie Burkhalter. Today we will be discussing different types of muscle function and the muscle control formula. In reference to muscle function, the control of even the simplest joint movement requires the cooperative action of several muscles working together as a single unit. This cooperative action is called muscle synergy. Synergistic muscles work together, but there are other muscles with opposing functions that work against the particular movement. The overall effect of all the muscles working together at a joint determines the movement. There are 5 different functional terms that are important to understanding how muscles cooperate and provide movements at a joint. These terms are agonist, neutralization, stabilization, antagonist, and coactivation. Let's take a moment to look at each of these functions. Agonist muscles actively control a single joint movement or a single joint position. For example, take elbow flexion. The brachialis and bicep brachii work together as agonist muscles to cause the elbow to bend like this. Neutralization is the process of canceling out unwanted movements, which is important because many muscles perform more than one function at a given joint. Our bicep brachii not only aids to cause flexion at the elbow, but also supinates the forearm. When we just want to bend our elbow without supinating the forearm, neutralization of the muscle has to occur. Stabilization of muscles is activated when movement of only one bone is desired, but more than one bone tends to move because of the force applied to the bone. What does this mean? Well, for example, the anterior thigh musculature not only moves the femur in flexion, but also causes the hip flexors to tilt the pelvis anteriorly. If you desire to flex the femur but not tilt the pelvis, the abdominal muscles must contract to stabilize the pelvis. Thus, the abdominal muscles act as stabilizers. Antagonist muscles act against a movement or position. This means when the agonist, or the muscle providing the joint movement, actively shortens with a concentric action, the antagonist actively lengthens with an eccentric action. So with the flexion at the elbow, as the biceps brachii concentrically contract or shorten, the triceps, which are the antagonist, lengthen with an eccentric movement. Finally, we have coactivation, the simultaneous action of both the agonist and antagonist muscles. This type of function is advantageous when movements require a quick change of direction, when a heavy load needs to be carried, or to make a joint stiffer and more difficult to destabilize. So although a muscle's job is to contract, it does so in a variety of different ways to provide fluid and effective movements. The next key topic we're going to look at in this chapter is the muscle control formula. One of the key goals of movement analysis is being able to identify which specific muscles are active in producing and controlling a movement at a particular joint. The 6 steps of the muscle control formula help us learn how to do this. The steps include: identify the joint movement or position, identify the effect of the external force, for example gravity, on the joint movement or position, by asking yourself what movement would the external force produce in the absence of muscle action. 3, identify the type of muscle action. Would it be concentric, eccentric, or isometric? 4, identify the plane of movement and the axis of rotation. For example, a jumping jack would take place in the frontal plane about a sagittal horizontal axis. 5, identify the side of the joint axis where the muscles are lengthening and the side in which they are shortening. And lastly, 6, discern which muscles are producing or controlling the movement based on information that was gathered. With all that being said, let's apply these steps to the bicep curl or elbow flexion. Step 1, movement. The movement is flexion. Step 2, force. Gravity is the external force, which tends to extend the elbow. Step 3, action. The movement, flexion, is opposite the external force, gravity. To flex at the elbow, the muscles need to actively shorten with a concentric action. Step 4, the plane and axis. Flexion of the elbow happens in the sagittal plane about a frontal horizontal axis, and the frontal horizontal axis is located through the elbow joint. Step 5, side. The muscles on the anterior part of the arm are shortening, while the muscles on the posterior arm are lengthening. And 6, muscles. From step 3, we know there's a concentric action, and from step 5, we know the muscles on the anterior side of the joint are shortening. So in conclusion, the anterior muscles of the arm, which are the biceps brachii, the brachialis, and the brachioradialis, are responsible for elbow flexion. Arm muscles produce many functions that allow us to perform everyday tasks and activities such as walking, getting out of a chair, or playing a sport. It's important to know how these muscles function during activity, as well as knowing what muscles we are activating during particular movements. I hope this provided a further understanding of an important concept you should know.